podcast, where we're focusing on a crucial topic in home improvement, insulation. I'm Anna Scothan, and this episode supports the NHIC's Doorstep Digests, specifically the Guide on Insulating the Home. Doorstep Digests are informative guides created by the National Home Improvement Council to help tradespeople and homeowners make well-informed decisions about various aspects of home improvement. Each digest focuses on a specific topic and provides insights, tips, and practical advice on improving energy efficiency, safety, and overall home performance. As listeners will know, it's important to look after the fabric of any building, and you can improve the thermal performance of your home by investing in insulation. I'm pleased that joining me today to discuss all things insulation is Sandy MacGregor from Energystore. Sandy, it's lovely to have you here.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and Energystore?
Yes, so I'm Sandy MacGregor. I'm the Regional Director for Energystore. So we are a manufacturer of insulation products that are both used in both new build and retrofit. As well as having our manufacturing side, we also have insulation, so install services for insulation, either through our network or through our own services. But really what we're looking to do is develop solutions that are going to help improve the home and improve energy efficiency across the sector.
Fantastic. And why is insulation such a critical aspect of modern living?
I think what we've seen continually over the last while is the continual pressures on price for homeowners, and also the move and the desire to improve to reduce carbon, take into the fact that we've got the global challenges when it comes to climate. So insulation's got a major part to play to not only improve the comfort of individuals in their home, but also look at how we reduce that carbon footprint, but also importantly reduce the cost for homeowners to heat their home and live in a comfortable environment.
Yeah, so it not only helps you keep warm and makes you feel comfortable, and it's worth noting, listeners, we're recording this on a day when we're in minus temperatures and there's snow on the ground, so you definitely feel the need for your insulation today. But what different types of insulation are there possible?
Yeah, so there's lots of different products now available on the market, and one of the key considerations when you're looking at it is really to take into account the product that's most suitable for the property. But what we
Yeah.
have is for the different types of product, you have what we manufacture is EPS bead insulation, so that goes in kind of cavity walls. You also have mineral fiber insulation. You could go down the eco route and there's sort of lamb's wool, this sort of thing. And there's also kind of PIR products and things like this, more rigid board solutions. But one of the things of what is the most applicable insulation for the property really has to be assessed on a property basis. And you've got, if there's a cavity there, it might be cavity insulation, but there's also kind of internal wall insulation, external wall insulation. And there's a lot of options there that really, when someone's considering what they can do in their home, there's a lot more now available on the market that can help improve that performance.
And it's not just the walls that can be insulated either, is it? You can look at the floors and roof spaces as well.
Absolutely. You can, loft insulation is one of the cheapest methods of being able to improve the performance of a home, and it's one of the quick and simple measures to get done. But absolutely, there's underfloor insulation, party wall insulation. There's a lot of products there now that can help to improve that thermal envelope.
Yeah, and I think actually it's often a good time to tell if somebody's home is well insulated when there's snow about, as there is at the minute, is whether the snow, if you look at a street, which houses has the snow melted on or not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you can. It's definitely if you're in the insulation world, you kind of start to look for these things, and you can see the homes that don't have clearly got no loft insulation in them. Yeah.
And um, are all types of insulation the same? Are they all sort of, do they all have the similar sort of performance, or can you get much more uh, sort of modern, innovative, high performance, quite thin um, insulations, or are they all much of a muchness? Is it just about what is right for your house type?
So there's lots of different performance elements from them, Anna, and it really kind of depends on what that is you're looking for in that property. So you will have some that will be higher performing, and as you say, maybe thinner. So if you're thinking of an IWI, so internally, so you don't take as much room, you want to put something on that. The downside with that is it can often be more costly.
Mm.
Because these products, the higher performance and kind of that thinner spot will kind of cost a bit more. But that might be the only thing that's available for that type of property, depending on what the requirements are. But no, there's a lot of different products depending on what it is that you're trying to do. And the reality is some properties need more than others. Some will need better performance, whereas others are a bit more modern, just need a little bit of a top up depending on what's required. But the PIR will tend to be more higher performing product with regards to thermal performance, but then it's not suitable for a cavity. That's really an internal or external wall. So when you're looking at a cavity, it's something like a mineral wool or an EPS bead, where you get a good level of performance, but it gives you can fill within that existing building structure rather than putting anything additional inside and out.
Yeah. So as much as it sounds sort of easy to put insulation in, and we often see adverts possibly on the telly about, just popping insulation in your roof and things like that. It sounds to me as if it's something that it's much better to seek advice from a professional on, for somebody to actually, who is a certified professional and an installer, to give you the right advice for what's needed for your home.
Absolutely. I think, with maybe in the past, people would, loft roll is probably one of the things that people would easily do it, go down to
Yeah.
B&Q and DIY. But when it comes to the other measures, you're really wanting to get an experienced professional. And really there's a few factors for that. These professionals that are doing that, they can give you a guarantee with the product. So, they're going to give you a workmanship and a product guarantee. Usually in retrofit, that's a 25-year product guarantee. So you've got some comfort and coverage there of the work quality being done. But also, as the big thing is, you really want to be installing the measures that are most suitable for your property. So there is a typical external wall, internal wall cavity, but not necessarily every one of those is suitable for every property. So getting an expert to say, no, well, this would be the product that would be most suitable, you're more likely to see the biggest uplift from, or it's where your budget is and understanding where that comes in. It's really important, because just taking something off the shelf, putting it on, might lead to additional problems further down the line. And as Anna, I know we've had a few conversations, especially with some of the members at NHIC, regarding ventilation and things like this as
Mm.
well. When we're improving the thermal envelope, we do need to take into account ventilation and the other aspects of we're doing. Yes, we want to improve the comfort of the home, keep us cool in summer, warm in winter, but also we want to make sure that air quality is good and we're getting enough transfer of air, and we're not going to give any other issues, because as we've seen in the past, when something has gone wrong, it's
Mm.
usually when something like ventilation or this sort of thing hasn't been taken into account. So so getting an expert in there to do that sort of assessment and look at that, so it's definitely what I'd recommend when you're
Yeah.
looking.
And you said something there, Sandy, around insulation helping you keep cool in the summer. So, or having a properly performing envelope, that it helps. I guess it takes the edge off of all weather extremes that we find in the UK, because we are getting much warmer and wetter summers, and cold snaps, and that does affect the way that our buildings perform, doesn't it?
It does, yes. I mean, we are seeing more extremes. Even as you said, we're sitting in minus temperatures at the moment. Probably, yes, we're at a winter period, but it's probably a bit earlier than we traditionally expect
Yeah.
to be hitting it. So you are seeing more extremes. So you want to really make sure your building envelope's able to help you to battle with that, because otherwise your heating systems are going to have to work harder, which means your energy bills are going to be higher, which means you're going to use more gas, more electricity, everything, which puts continual strain. And in our push as a nation, and is to try and reduce that carbon output, and increase our energy efficiency, the insulation's got to try and maintain that and take the peaks off of the demand, is certainly, it's a major part to play.
Absolutely. And I think that's an interesting, I think if we can explore that a bit further, because I think it helps us to understand, because people are going to be starting to look over the next few years at getting their homes low carbon ready. More
Yeah,
grants will be coming out from government around decarbonisation and using less energy. And one of the things that people that first sort of go to really, and there's been lots of grants even up to date for this, is about putting a heat pump on.
yeah,
And a heat pump is an incredibly sophisticated piece of advanced machinery, and it doesn't work as simply as a boiler, which
oh,
is a very immediate form of heat that we get in homes. And obviously we've got used to that type of heat, but
yeah.
having and those quick temperature changes in our homes. But how can having insulation support a heat pump, and how is it part of the whole mix of getting a building to work more efficiently?
Yeah, no, so I mean, the heat pumps is a relatively new technology that we're starting to roll out. You've been around for a while, but en masse, we're starting to roll them out. But
Yeah,
to help heat pumps work as efficiently, as effectively as they can, you need to sort of minimize the amount of energy requirement for that heat pump. So you want to maintain the temperature within the building as consistently as you can so that the heat pump doesn't need to work as hard. So if you just put a heat pump, replace in a standard system, don't look at your radiator sizes, don't look at your pipes, all that sort of thing that comes along with that element, and you don't look at your insulation requirements, what you're likely to see is your energy bills increase dramatically because you're using more electricity. And that's not the heat pump's fault. That's
mhm,
it's because we've not looked at how to properly install that and how to efficiently run it. So if you've got your thermal envelope as a lot better, then you'll be able to maintain that heat within the building.
yeah,
And as heat pumps run at a lower temperature than standard heating, you're wanting that to run as low and constant as you can. If you're expecting the heat pump to suddenly go up to the temperatures that we'd see a gas boiler at, it's not going to work like that, and it's going to cost a lot more money. So I always think whenever you're considering a heat pump installation into your home, insulation should be part of that consideration,
yes,
because the heat pump, it needs all the correct equipment to go in, but as if it can have a good envelope, it's going to have to not work as hard, and if it doesn't work as hard, uses less energy and has the opportunity to kind of help reduce energy bills moving forward.
absolutely, absolutely. And you if you're putting something in that's a sophisticated piece of kit, you don't want it to be producing heat that just ends up being wasted
Yeah,
through a leaky building that's full of drafts and not properly insulated. So I think it's important that these, as you say, that these considerations are made together.
yeah,
And I think that's really important. So you've talked about how important it is to make sure that you get the right advice from a certified installer. Um, for anybody that's listening that is an installer and that is looking at extending their product portfolio into thinking about insulation, or they're helping their customers transition maybe from a gas traditional solution over towards heat pumps. What would you say to them about, are there specific competency schemes around insulation, or is it just connected to being trained by a manufacturer? How does that process work?
yeah. So there's a few different routes to go down depending when. So I mean, for insulation, particularly if it's something like our product, you would need to be trained. The installer would need to be trained from the manufacturer. So we would train and card all of the installers in our product, and a lot of the other manufacturers would do the same. And they
Mhm.
have to, because the system designers effectively would train them. But then what you find is a lot of these installers will be part of accreditation bodies as well. So they'll be Kiwa or BBA registered for the products. But then what you're also looking at them being is probably part of Trustmark's scheme, because if they're going to do particularly any grant funding,
Yeah,
they'll have to be registered for that to do their lodgements. And when you're looking at something like renewables or insulation, other companies like MCS and the IAA and bodies are all companies that you would expect them to be involved in, and their training and their inspecting as well, along the process, along with Trustmark, to ensure some of the quality that's going on. So whenever if you're a heat pump manufacturer interested in getting involved in insulation, then looking at what some of the system designers are available on the likes of with Trustmark and the IEA, that sort of thing is a good port of call. If you're a consumer looking at wanting to get somebody, looking at the Trustmark website and seeing what measures installers have accreditations for. A lot of the installers, particularly if they're working on such company schemes like the Eco4 scheme, will
Mhm.
need to have multi insulation and energy efficiency measures. So quite a few of them will do insulation, they'll do heat pumps, they'll do solar, they'll
Yeah.
do the whole package for you. And you're really looking for an installer that has these accreditations, because there will be some independent monitoring on them, but they'll also have the ability to raise the guarantees and things that you want to have
Yeah.
to show that the work's going to be done correctly.
And it's important that it is done correctly, isn't it? Because you can't see it.
No.
If you're looking at internal wall insulation, you know, once it's done, people decorate, they get their carpets in, the furniture's all in, the pictures are up. And external wall insulation, the rendering gets put on the outside, and if it's a cavity, then so once insulation's been done,
Yeah.
it's really difficult to see if it's been done properly
Yeah.
and what then the resulting performance is. And so, in that situation, it's really important that you get it done by professionals and people that are properly trained, properly assessed, and have the guarantees that you mentioned. Can you just explain how that works in reality?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're correct. It's one of these products that you might spend reasonable money on to get it done, but you'll never see it again.
Yeah.
And you hope to never see it again, because then it should be working well for you. But absolutely. So going through the different process, every measure they've normally done in a home would have in a retrofit environment. If you're having a fully qualified installer, would have a guarantee available for it. So the installer would be able to, if you're getting, for example, loft insulation, cavity insulation, and a heat pump, all of those measures will be able to have guarantees raised. So the installer would install the product, go to the guarantee agency, get your product warranty specifically for that to your home, which is then usually a 25-year guarantee that would be on that solution. And particularly if you're looking at potentially accessing some of the grant funding that might be available from the government, the two big ones at the moment that we're seeing a lot of is Eco4, or the Great British Insulation Scheme, more colloquially known as GBIS. And those, are available to a lot of members of the public, to be able to gain access to some grant funding. But all of those, a requirement is to get a guarantee in there, and that gives you some comfort of that product. And if something does go wrong, which we can't pretend that everything goes perfect all the time, then having that mechanism in place gives you some comfort that it's going to get fixed and repaired for you if there is anything. But most of the time you won't have any issues, but it's good to have that comfort knowing that you've got that there.
Yeah. And I think any customer that isn't eligible for grant funding, I think it's still worthwhile making sure that well, not, I don't think it is essential that you
Yeah.
still use competent installers and compliant products. Don't just think, well, because I don't have to have that level of security. You probably need it even more because you're spending your own money and more of it. There isn't that sort of grant support. So even if there are people listening who there might be some installers listening who don't normally go for eco-funded work and don't go for grant-supported work. They just work in the private sector. You should still be offering this level of um, um, quality to their
Yeah,
customers and this level of security.
absolutely. And that's why the guarantee bodies offer the what they call the able to pay market as well.
Yeah.
So even if it's not granted, and offer that level of comfort. And this is really what you should be looking for, with someone coming in. You know, it it might be cheap. Some installers might try and do it down a cheaper route for you to say you don't need this, but it's definitely something. Having the installers that are fully accredited, have the ability to raise these guarantees, and give you that assurance is really what you should be looking for, because then you've got some comfort that they're going to go in and do the job correctly, because they have had to go through a lot of accreditations and compliance to get that work done correctly. And as you say, it's probably even more important whenever it's not funded and you're paying it yourself, to make sure that comfort's there. But
Yeah,
yet the same routes, Trustmark, you'll be able to see your accredited installers and things there. It's definitely where making sure they've got those compliance checks there, because that's what you really want that in place to make sure a good job's going to get done.
absolutely, absolutely. And as we start, well, not I guess not start, but as we start moving more towards planning for decarbonisation and for lower carbon homes, and um, I think insulation is one of the key elements of that, isn't it? And making sure that you're starting from the best point that you can with the fabric of your building.
Absolutely, and as we move towards the decarbonisation, we're moving towards low carbon heating, such as heat pumps, to allow them, as we said earlier, to allow them to really have the impact that they want to have. We need to reduce the demand, and to reduce that demand, having insulation in the building will allow those to run more efficiently, and ultimately allow us to have a lower reduction, a greater reduction in carbon heating, so that we've got a lower level. If we don't take insulation into factor, yes, we'll have low carbon heating, but we'll be using a lot more of it. So
Mm,
having those work in tandem, I think, is really the best way for us to move forward, because as well as moving from your oil or gas boilers to heat pumps, you just don't want the heat pumps working as hard as they have to. So you reduce that demand, and we can have the double impact of reduced demand and move to a cleaner source of energy, and that means it allows us to have a real impact on low carbon heating moving forward.
yeah, and ultimately, over time, help people manage their energy bills more, because we've had sort of very low energy bills for a very long time that a lot of people have got very used to, and over the last couple of years, energy bills have adjusted, shall we say,
Yeah.
and certainly everybody starts to feel a bit more of a pinch in their pocket for their energy bills. And that trajectory is only going one way. Energy isn't going to become cheap
No.
anymore. It's a significant portion of people's take home salary and income. And it's important that that isn't wasted, whether you believe in climate change or not, whether you believe the science, you should want to make sure that your your income goes further. And it just
Yeah.
seems crazy to waste it by having a poorly insulated and poorly performing home.
Absolutely, and I think we obviously have two camps when we're moving towards energy efficiency. We sort of have the reduction in fuel poverty, and we also have the low carbon element to it. And these sometimes don't necessarily work hand in hand, because initially some of that low carbon might cost more in the running costs, etc. But hopefully that will change over time. But bringing all the whole thing in together is what is the view, in my personal view, we need to take. We can improve the thermal envelope of the building. That will reduce the demand needed to heat it. Put in a low carbon energy source, then you're able to then reduce the carbon impact of that building. And then you can go a step further and start to look at renewables as well. We are starting to see a lot of properties getting insulation, heat pumps, and solar panels put on the roof
Yes.
as well. And then obviously you've got batteries to be added into the mix as well. And as we move forward, energy bills, as you say, Anna, only going to go one way. So we need to look at some of those ways that we can help reduce that. And some of that is in solar, some of it's storing that energy, using that energy when we need it at night, when we're in the home, when it's colder. I'm not sure how much we'll get in Scotland out of use of the solar panels, but in general, large chunks of the UK will get a lot of use out of that, and being able to store it and use it when we need it means we can reduce the demand on the grid, but also reduce our demand for the house. And
Yeah.
that's what we want going forward. We can then do some control on our costs, but also help push towards the being greener and being more energy efficient.
Yeah, so it's better for both types of green, isn't it? It's better for the green in your pocket and better for the green in the planet.
100%, yeah.
Um, but that's probably a bit of an Americanism.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting that you mentioned solar there and linking it to the batteries, and I think we will end up, in 20 years' time, we're definitely in a transition at the minute. In 20 years'
Yeah.
time, it will be very standard practice for homes to have solar panels, to have battery storage, and to be driven through low carbon heating and have heat pumps on and electrified heat. And we're going through that transition. And that's why the NHIC has produced these doorstep digests that support people and are just interesting to read, help people make decisions, and help people on their home improvement and low carbon journey. And could you just give us a sort of quick overview of what's covered in the insulation digest?
Yeah, so the digest gives some overview on the different types of insulation that's available. As we mentioned earlier, there's a different product types, but also the different applications, whether it be your loft insulation, your IWI and EWI, and it gives you a bit of an overview so that you can see what some of the considerations or options might be there for you, and some of that element that to take into account. And again, the digest gives you some steer as towards again looking for that competent person, looking for somebody who's qualified, who understands it, and under can point you in the right direction of what would be best for your home. And I think the doorstep digest is a great introduction to somebody picking up. As I think, what might I need? What might be the options for my home? What might be the considerations I want to think of, and give you the starting point to think. Okay, these are what some of this might look like, and give you some point in the right direction of where you go next.
Yeah, and I want to come on to a retrofit assessment because it might
Yep.
be that you think, well, I've really got no idea, and actually I want to get a professional in. But I also wanted to ask you, is insulation the same as it was 20 years ago? If somebody's thinking, well, I had my cavity done 20 years ago or 10 years ago, have things moved on? Is insulation in 2024 the same as insulation was in 2004?
No, we've certainly seen advances in the insulation. We've seen products improve with better thermal performance, and improvements, and we've seen better, applications that are able to better fit in the home. And we mentioned earlier about having a thin profile inside the house for internal wall and that sort of thing. Whereas previously you'd have had to put something that was a lot bigger on the inside of your wall. Now you can have low profile. So even with our own product, EPS, 20 odd years ago, it would have been a lower performing one. It would have been a white bead. It's now a grey bead with enhanced thermals. So all of that sort of moved on. And we do see on occasion properties being extracted and refilled with more modern insulation. So, the cavities get cleaned, the old stuff come out, and a new insulation put in. And that's sometimes it's because there's been something gone wrong, but other times it's just because there is a new product now. There is something that's new and upgraded. You would upgrade your windows in that time. Why wouldn't you upgrade to the latest version of insulation?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And you would upgrade your car. You wouldn't
exactly.
expect a car, a 20-year-old car, to be as efficient as one that's coming off of the factory line now.
Exactly.
I mean, I almost had to check myself then and think, gosh, is 2004 really 20 years ago? Which is
Yeah.
this a frightening thought. But if we can just really quickly have a little chat about retrofit assessments. So if
Yeah.
all this seems a bit overwhelming, even if you're an installer and you're thinking, how am I ever going to advise my homeowner customers about all of this? Tell us how retrofit assessment fits into the picture.
Yeah, so a retrofit assessor would come out to your property and assess the building as is. So we have, as we mentioned, there's a lot of different product types and a lot of different insulation types and solutions. But what you're really wanting is an assessor will come out and look at your property as is, not just on the, oh, you've got a three-bed semi-detached, that means you're due this. And they'll be able to see what condition your heating's in, or what sort of position you are in heating and with your radiators and everything. what sort of insulation measures you have, but more importantly, what insulation measures could be applicable to your property, and give you the options of what would be suitable, and then they can look at help how that pieces together. What we'll see a lot in the retro world is the retrofit assessment and the retrofit coordination if a full project's going ahead. And what you're doing is you're assessing the possibilities for the building or what might be, and then you can do your medium term plan. So you don't have to have the ideal is obviously we would all go get all the measures done in our house at the very start, but finances don't always allow that. So what it'll do, these will be the measures that are suitable for the property, and then the coordinators can do your medium term plan to say, okay, maybe you want to do your cavity walls now. Here's how you get to being on a heat pump. Here's how you would, and here's the other options to help you upgrade. And they can really take your individual property and help you start that journey for what that upgrade would look like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's that what can you do now? And even if you're doing room by room, what can be done in that space, and don't lose the opportunities to improve the performance of your home.
Absolutely. And we do know, because there is so many products now on the market, there are solutions for pretty much every type of property, from your old 150-year-old plus properties right up to your modern new builds. And there's not one size fits all, but there's a lot of options there. And getting someone to have a look and look at it individually is definitely something that's beneficial. And then that sort of again starts you down the path of, if you've got an installer that's doing a retrofit assessment and looking at that, these are all installers who'll be feeding into those accreditation bodies, and all they have the guarantees, all of that sort of compliance element that's important to make sure you're getting the job done throughout the way. But having somebody do that, your property's been assessed. It's not just somebody over the phone saying, yeah, 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 we can give you cavity wall insulation.
Yeah.
No, no, your building's suitable for cavity wall. Here's why, and here's what it'll do for you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sandy, for sharing your expertise with us today. And for our listeners who want to learn more about insulation or find a certified installer, visit the Energystore and Trustmark website. Have a look on the NHIC's website, and also have a look at our Doorstep Digest. And the links for all of those things are in the show notes for today's episode. Thank you for joining us today. I think it's a really important subject, insulation, and it's important to get it right because it does make a big difference. Special thanks to you, Sandy, for joining us and for sharing your knowledge and expertise. Remember, you can explore this topic further by reading the NHIC's Doorstep Digest on insulation. It's packed with valuable information to help you make informed decisions about improving home insulation. We appreciate you tuning in, and we look forward to sharing more essential home improvement topics with you on our next episode. Until then, stay warm and stay safe.